What Really Happened with your host, Mike Rivero. You're listening to the Republic Broadcasting Network, where you'll find out what the Fukushima's going on.
Welcome to our show today. It is Wednesday, March 24th, 2021, middle of the weekday, hump day, starting that long, slow glide down to Pow on a Friday, and whatever insanity waits for us in the coming week after that. We have a lot to talk about today, and as usual, we're going to do an hour of news and then an hour of open phone lines. And Mike is in our control room, twiddling the dials, keeping us out of trouble. So let's get right on into it. There is another big storm making its way across the south. I mean, today here in Indiana, it's a beautiful day except for the pollen. And but we're expecting thunder showers tomorrow. So once again, those poor people along the south are getting hit by another late winter, or perhaps you could call it a spring storm, but we'll see what's going on. Apparently they got a foot of snow out there in the Rocky Mountains from this one. All right, let's talk about this Boulder, Colorado shooting. And according to Laura Loomer, she's saying that the shooting suspect, well, he's not a suspect. They caught him doing it, and he's basically confessed. But Ahmed al-Issa swore allegiance to ISIS before the shooting. And remember, he's a Syrian migrant to the United States. He swore allegiance to ISIS prior to the shooting. And on her Telegram channel, Loomer wrote, "Source tells me shooter carried out attack in the name of ISIS. Biden administration has already given orders to keep it under wraps to avoid conversation in the media about Islamic terrorism and reversal of Trump's travel ban," which the terrorist was opposed to, obviously. Excuse me. Like I said, there's a lot of pollen today. This brings up an interesting question. How is it that Laura Loomer was prevented from buying a gun, but a Syrian migrant on the FBI watch list got one without a problem the day after the ban on assault weapons was lifted? So there's something not really going. It doesn't make sense. It really doesn't. Getting on back to Ahmed al-Issa, who basically shot up the King Soopers grocery store. He killed 2 people in the parking lot before entering the store, where he killed another 8 people. Investigators have searched his family's $800,000 5-bedroom home in Arvada. So this guy, he had a comfortable lifestyle, still living with his parents apparently. And this Ahmed al-Issa was 21 years old, kind of a little old to be living with his family, but he was known to the FBI. He ranted about Islamophobes hacking his phone before the shooting incident. And he's basically got a history of anti-white racism and hate crime hoaxes, and he was just obviously had a problem. Now, the brother of the Boulder supermarket shooter describes him as deeply disturbed, very antisocial, paranoid, and said it's a mental illness. Now, the shooter's brother, Ali Aliwi al-Issa, told newspaper The Daily Beast his brother is paranoid. And in high school, the shooter talked about being chased and that somebody was looking for him. So this leads me to the important question: was this shooter on or withdrawing from prescription antidepressants, which have a long link with a lot of these mass shootings that are going on? Interestingly enough, and as we saw with the Atlanta shooting, which went from being about sex addiction to anti-Asian hate, they're already trying to twist this one around. And over at Twitter, they're saying that calling Ahmed al-Aliwi al-Issa as a white Christian terrorist doesn't violate its misinformation policies, even though that phrase is completely wrong for the first 2 words. He's not white, he's not Christian, he's from Syria, he's a Muslim, certainly he's a terrorist. And but Twitter says, no, you can say that. We're not going to block that. Not like we blocked all those lies that came from former President Donald Trump. Another article on the same topic here. This is from the Gateway Pundit, wondering why, after all the focus that was put on the race of the victims in Atlanta, that we're seeing hardly anything about the race of all 10 shooting victims by Ahmed al-Issa. And I know the pictures are out there and the names are out there, but they're pointedly not trying to make any connection about what race they were. CNN is out there pushing the fear porn, saying, "Are we facing a spring and summer of mass casualty events?" So they're definitely out there pushing the fear porn. And if you don't believe me, get on a search engine like Google and search for mass shooting surge, and what you will see is a whole slew of recent articles about how mass shootings are on the rise in this state and that state and your state and this state over here, and it's out there. They're definitely pushing this agenda of mass shootings. Story coming on out of NBC, no less. On the heels of 2 mass shootings that have shocked the country, the Senate is once again weighing an overhaul of the nation's gun laws with a murky path ahead. Now, despite Joe Biden's pleas on Tuesday, 2 House-approved bills to close gaps in the background check system don't currently have enough votes needed to clear the Senate, according to senators who've spoken with colleagues to gauge support. So it's still out there. Maybe I think what it is more and more people realize these mass shootings are, in fact, staged propaganda events to push the agenda. Now, White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki said yesterday that President Joe Biden is considering executive action on gun control, bypassing Congress to push the anti-gun rights agenda. Well, there is a certain problem with that. And the first is that executive orders technically only apply to the executive branch. They do not, in fact, apply to you, the American citizens. The president can write executive orders saying that we all have to paint our belly buttons blue. There's no legal mandate that says we have to go along with that. Senator John Kennedy is pushing back on the gun grab by saying you don't stop drunk drivers by getting rid of all the sober drivers, and he's absolutely right. We know that drunk driving is a bad thing. People get killed. In fact, more people are killed by drunk drivers than by assault rifles. But nobody ever seriously talks about taking cars away from the law-abiding drivers. It's just not done. You don't hear that. Okay, story coming on out of WayneDupree.com, saying how it's becoming very clear why Team Biden is fighting to keep Biden away from the press. And there's a recent video, and it appears that Biden somehow managed to escape his handlers and made his way over to reporters, and it turned out to be an absolute political disaster. And after facing scrutiny for not having any Asian Americans in his cabinet, Biden hit back by claiming that he has the most diverse cabinet and does indeed have Asian Americans, quote, at different levels, end quote. Well, I don't think the president's cabinet should be based on a checklist of diversity. I think it should be the very best minds in the entire country. Again, getting back to being a strict meritocracy. People are noticing something odd about Kamala Harris and Biden. There's a lot of photos showing them traveling together. And the reason this is odd is because normal Secret Service practice for all prior administrations is for the president and vice president to always travel separately so that a single accident cannot take them both out at once. That is why there's an Air Force One and an Air Force Two. They're not supposed to travel together, but apparently they are now. And making the issue even a little bit more interesting, a story from Tethasta.com, there's a leaked email that has come on out instructing federal agencies to refer to the top level of the government as the Biden-Harris administration. And it does look like they're getting ready to promote, shall we say, Kamala Harris to that Oval Office, which Hillary Clinton's going to be very unhappy about because she wanted to be the first woman president of the United States of America. Well, too bad, Hillary. What can I tell you? Jen Psaki also made a comment on Monday saying that Joe Biden regularly consults with Barack Obama on a range of issues. And Psaki was asked by a reporter whether Obama had visited the White House and how often the two speak. And she responded, Obama and Biden have a relationship that is not defined as president and vice president. Instead, they are friends. They consult and talk about a range of issues, and I would expect that this continues through the course of President Biden's presidency until Kamala takes over, of course. Matt Taibbi has a new article out basically looking at one of Biden's appointees who seems to not really have a strong, shall we say, resonance with the First Amendment. And this is Columbia law professor Timothy Wu was appointed by Biden to the National Economic Council. The press hailed it as a great achievement for progressives. Wu is the author of The Curse of Bigness, Antitrust in the New Gilded Age, and he is a staunch advocate of antitrust enforcement, and Biden's choice of him, along with the appointment of Lena Khan to the Federal Trade Commission, was seen as a signal the new administration was assembling what Wired called an antitrust all-star team. But apparently Chicago law professor Eric Posner's piece for a Project Syndicate was titled Antitrust is Back in America. Posner noted Wu's appointment comes as Senator Amy Klobuchar has introduced regulatory legislation that ostensibly targets companies like Facebook and Google, which a House committee last year concluded have accrued monopoly power, and they certainly have on that. A lot of people still talking about House Resolution 1, the very first piece of business they did after they started the current legislative season. And it's called, actually, the For the People Act of 2021. Mike Pence has opined on the bill. The editorial board of the Wall Street Journal sounded the alarm back in January. National Review came out and called it a partisan assault on American democracy. And some of the things that they have inside House Resolution 1 is to ban all voter ID laws and to allow ballot harvesting. They want to expand Election Day into election season by mandating that mail-in ballots be counted 10 days after the election would normally be over. They also want automatic voter registration of people who apply for unemployment, Medicare, Obamacare, and college, or who are coming out of prison. In other words, they want to institutionalize the very means by which they stole last November's election. And unfortunately, they've got the votes to get it through the House. Whether it will get through the Senate or not remains to be seen. Ted Cruz has branded House Resolution 1 as one of the worst bills in history. Okay, now Representative Dean Phillips says the House's Democratic leadership should abstain from attempts to reverse a U.S. House race in Iowa. And this is the race that was decided by just 6 votes. And Dean Phillips is saying overturning it in the House would be even more painful for America. Well, what it's going to do is underscore the fact that the elections are no longer being decided by a vote of the people, but by political machinations. Senate Majority Leader Harry Reid is refunding his campaign nearly $17,000 that went to his granddaughter's jewelry company, supposedly for holiday gifts. And the move comes after the Federal Election Commission officials questioned the payments from Reid's campaign. In a letter sent last week, federal regulators asked for details about holiday gifts that his campaign funded. Okay, so Democratic Senator Tammy Duckworth says that she will not vote for any white Biden nominees unless they're lesbian, gay, bisexual, trans, or transgender. Now that sounds like discrimination to me. And again, we're getting away from the idea of a meritocracy. Little bit of good news. Over in Wisconsin, their assembly has voted to conduct a full-blown investigation into 2020 election fraud in that state. Irregularities and outright voter fraud were present in every state in America, but only a couple of states had more reports than Wisconsin. So the state assembly has passed a resolution allowing a full investigation that authorizes exercises complete legal powers to an investigative committee. So that's got to have the vote riggers quaking in their Gucci's. Over in Georgia, the Scan the Ballots effort is moving forward, and it involves Jovan Pulitzer's technique of forensically reviewing ballots from the 2020 election. So people are starting to fight back. People know that election was stolen. It was crooked. It's an open secret. And yet the corporate media, social media is still out there saying, oh, yes, the election was honest. Trust us. We wouldn't lie to you. The election was absolutely fair. Looking back at January 6th and the protest at the Capitol building, the authorities are out there literally trying to find and arrest every single person who took part in the protests, and it's getting a little weird out there. There is a retired female New York Police Department officer, and she surrendered to the FBI, and she's accused of storming the Capitol Hill building while playing a tambourine. Oh my goodness, she's got a tambourine. There are jingle jangles all over the place. It's horrible. She's got a tambourine. We're all going to die. Over at Black Lives Matter, it turns out, they're getting a lot of money. They are getting a lot of money. Now, Black Lives Matter is this far-left organization. It's founded by trained Marxists, and it wants to replace the nuclear family with the village, something that Hillary Clinton wanted to do. They want to abolish the police, prisons, and courts of law. In other words, they're after anarchy. And they are being financially supported by companies including Microsoft, Amazon, Nabisco, Airbnb, Gatorade, Atlantic, and Warner record labels, and they have made huge donations. Now, what they're doing harkens back to some of the stuff we saw under the early civil rights movement, where organizations by people like Jesse Jackson would go to these companies and say, if you financially support us, we'll make sure that your offices and buildings and storefronts are left alone in any potential riots. And so basically what Black Lives Matter is doing is they're running an extortion racket. These large corporations know that they're too politically visible and politically protected, to stop, so they're going to go along with that. Former President Trump is playing coy about his social media comeback. He's talking about starting his own social media network in the next 2 to 3 months, and I certainly am going to sign up. He says Twitter actually did him a favor, and he finished off his commentary by saying America no longer has a free press. Well, I'm sorry, Mr. Trump, but over here at the Republic Broadcasting Network, I like to think we're a free press. We're certainly talking about the things the legacy corporate media wish we would shut up about. So we do have a free press. It's just not on the television dial right now. Although One American News Network, has replaced Fox News as my favorite TV news show. Interesting story, this one coming on out of the Federalist. There was a leaked document that came on out showing that the Obama Federal Trade Commission literally gave Google permission to be a monopoly after the Google executives helped Obama win his second election. And the FTC had the chance to face down Google, but they basically blinked and blinked hard. Obviously, there was some influence there. And they backed off, and Google became the monopoly that it is today. Meanwhile, Democrats are planning to come for big tech with a swarm of small antitrust bills. And I wish them a lot of success, because those social media companies are too big, they're too powerful, they're too influential, and nobody elected them to decide for us what we're going to see, hear, and read. All right, so let's get into COVID-19. A lot of stuff happening there. Story out of Investment Watch blog, why the lockdowns are being continuously extended. Lockdowns and masks are now expected to last until 2025. My response to that is no way. I'm fed up with the masks. I'm seeing people in retail establishments and just out, in public, no longer bothering with the masks. They've had it. They're fed up. Story coming on out of Rutherford Institute saying, will our freedoms survive the tyranny of COVID-19? Saying that the remedy appears to be worse than the disease. Okay, we got to take a break for commercials. We'll be back with more news after these few words. We're talking about COVID-19, and there's a very disturbing story that came out of Anti-Empire. According to the United Nations, according to UNICEF, they're basically saying that the lockdowns have caused 250,000 infant deaths in South Asia. And UNICEF estimated there'd been 229,000 more deaths among under fives than in 2019, and 3 out of 5 of those deaths were thought to be newborns. That is way too high a price to pay for the lockdowns. And there's another price out there. This is from TAP News Wire, and it's talking about how child suicide is becoming an international epidemic that is linked to the COVID-19 lockdowns because of the heavily restricted life. And, for almost all of us, life in 2020 was an isolating and difficult year. It certainly was for Claire and I. And doctors are warning that children in particular are experiencing grave mental health consequences as a result of the lockdowns, leading to an epidemic of child suicide. They just can't deal with the isolation. They can't deal with the mask. What the children are saying who are being studied are saying, yes, I'm not doing activities anymore. I'm not doing my music. Going to school is hard in the mornings. I'm having difficulty waking up. I'm fed up with the mask. And I can identify with that. It's, I haven't picked up my banjo in, close to a year. Over in Great Britain, their year of lockdowns has been marked by the government's incompetence, hypocrisy, not to mention utter disdain for the people of Great Britain. And there's been a lot of mistakes, but a bigger frustration has been the blatant rule breaking by the elites, with mistresses, eye tests, and second homes all used as excuses to break the lockdown. So it's another classic case of one set of rules for the rulers and another set of rules for the ruled. Story coming on out of LifeSite News, and we mentioned this before, anti-lockdown protests are sweeping the globe. And there was this worldwide rally for freedom, took place in Canada, USA, Uruguay, Argentina, Ireland, Britain, Norway, the Netherlands, France, Belgium, Germany, Italy, Croatia, Serbia, Ukraine, Japan, and Australia, among other countries, to protest the lockdowns and the mask mandates and the coercive promotion of the COVID-19 vaccines, which we've all had to deal with. Over in Germany, Angela Merkel has canceled the Easter lockdown because of the backlash from the German people, and she says, I take full responsibility, and I'm sure she'll be reminded of that next election. Meanwhile, up in Oregon, they want to make their COVID-19 restrictions permanent and track all vaccine refusers. Now, there's a new rule that they're looking at in the state. The Oregon Department of Occupational Safety and Health wants to replace the temporary Chinese virus rules, which are set to expire on the 4th of May, with a permanent one that can only be repealed by OSHA once it is no longer needed to address the coronavirus pandemic. Here's another one, and we have been talking about how birth rates in this country are in decline. Part of it is the economy, obviously. Part of it is socialization, that having kids is a bad thing. A lot of it has to do with grown-ups who don't want to see their children growing up in this world. But there's also toxic chemicals in the environment that are lowering sperm counts in men. But this article from Zero Hedge is saying that the COVID-19 baby bust is here and may well be permanent. And there's Thomas Sobotka, a researcher at the Wittgenstein Center for Demography and Global Human Capital in Vienna, is saying the longer this period of uncertainty lasts, the more it will have a lifelong effect on the fertility rate. The Brookings Institution estimated last December that as a result of the pandemic, 300,000 fewer babies would be born in the U.S. in 2021 compared to last year, probably not including the children of the illegal immigrants. Over in Spain, they were reporting their child COVID deaths as the highest among the developed countries. It turned out they had a computer mistake. and the number was completely wrong. So got to check that software and make sure that it's really giving you right data. You know, garbage in, garbage out here. So the accuracy of the data is being disputed by the Spanish Society of Pediatric Infectology and the Spanish Society of Pediatric Intensive Care. And they're saying their numbers don't line up with the official numbers, and it appears to have been a computer error. AstraZeneca is still catching flack after being caught lying about their COVID vaccine trials, and over in Norway, following the deaths they've had there, they're saying AstraZeneca's vaccine may be stopped for good. And they're going to rely on other vaccines, possibly Sputnik 5. We're going to take a break for commercials, and we will talking about COVID-19 and vaccines. And the head of the World Health Organization, Dr. Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus, let me try this again. Ghebreyesus, yeah, that's it, Ghebreyesus, warned that it basically says it's grotesque that countries are putting their own citizens first when it comes to offering vaccines. Well, I hate to be the one to, countermand, if you will, the good doctor, but isn't it the function of a nation's government to be taking care of their citizens first and foremost? I would think so. Not everybody agrees. Hillary Clinton is urging Biden to give the COVID-19 vaccines to poor nation and complains that Russia and China are leading in vaccine diplomacy. And they're now ahead of the United States. And that if the United States, at taxpayer expense, starts giving the vaccines to these poor countries, that we will be able to pull ahead in vaccine diplomacy. Here I thought it was all about illness and health and things like that. Okay. A coalition of state attorneys general earlier today called on Facebook and Twitter to enforce their community guidelines and remove all anti-vaxxers from their services. So, just think about that. You can call the Boulder, Colorado shooter a white Christian, and that's okay with Twitter. But if you get out there and say, I'm very concerned about all these people dying from the mRNA vaccines, Twitter is going to cancel your account. Seems a little messed up to me, but that's just my perception here. Over in Italy, the doctors there are successfully treating COVID with hydroxychloroquine and vitamin D, which we've been hearing since the very beginning. This stuff just knocks it out. And of course, the pharmaceutical countries don't want a cure. Cures are a bad business model, according to Goldman Sachs. What they want are constant treatments and constant shots. And the price of the vaccines is already announced. They're going to be raising that price, and they're going to make it a yearly shot like the flu shot. So it's all about the Benjamins there. It's all about the Benjamins. All right, let's talk a little bit about international news. The Taliban supposedly, this could be propaganda, keep this in mind. The Taliban is supposedly threatening U.S. troops as Biden backtracks on the Trump agreements to get all the troops out of there after May 1st. And Suhail Shaheen, a member of the Taliban negotiation team, explained to reporters in Moscow that if American troops were to linger past the deadline, it would be a kind of violation of the agreement, and that violation would not be from our side. The violation would have a reaction. And that may be setting the stage for some kind of a false flag to justify keeping troops in Afghanistan. Russia and China are both lashing out in the response of the latest wave of sanctions targeting the two countries. Moscow is saying that they have no relations with the European Union as Brussels has unilaterally destroyed all the previously existing ties. So the world is starting to polarize. They're starting to pick sides for the big war. A naval group of the Baltic Fleet's 3 large amphibious assault ships and the corvette Boyki is accomplishing long-distance deployment tasks in the Atlantic Ocean. So they're out there stretching their flippers, if you will, and getting on out there and playing around in the Atlantic. Okay, this is another one which could easily be a piece of propaganda, because we know how much our government, and certainly Israel's government, want a U.S. war on Iran. This story is coming out of Blabberbuzz, and it says Iran reportedly threatened to attack Fort McNair in Washington, D.C., as well as the Army's Vice Chief of Staff, according to the Associated Press. Citing two, as usual, unidentified senior U.S. intelligence officials, the AP reports that the communications intercepted by the NSA indicated that Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps discussed carrying out a USS Cole-style attack on Fort McNair in January. Okay, except that I don't think that's who did the USS Cole. And I'm not the only one with doubts. Article coming out of Task and Purpose saying if Iran's alleged plan to launch a suicide boat attack on Fort McNair in Washington, D.C. sounds nuts, that's because it is. And it goes on, the NSA intercepted communications from members of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps discussing the USS Cole-style attacks against the Army installation last January. Due to these threats, the Army wants to push boat traffic further away from Fort McNair, according to AP, and they don't discuss the security details for senior officials. But the allegation of this Iranian suicide boat scheme has several troubling questions. Why would Iran attack a military installation that most Americans cannot find on a map? And why, of all people, would Iran try and kill the Army's Vice Chief of Staff? It does feel just a little bit wanky out there. Over in Israel, we're still 2 days away from the official deadline for results, but it's already starting to look like yet another deadlock. Netanyahu is pleading with his opponents to help him form a new government and avoid a fifth election. So it's still in turmoil over there, and they're saying that there won't be final official results on Friday anyway. This is an interesting one. Over, again, in Israel, they released a map, a detailed map of COVID-19 testing centers in Israel. It was published by the National Emergency Portal, and it revealed more than it was supposed to. The map also included information about Israeli military bases, including those that Tel Aviv normally does not admit to, let alone disclose their location. The map reportedly showed where Israel's Air Force and military intelligence bases are located. There's a big whoopsie there. Now, the online version of the map has already been scrubbed, but the big question is, who got a copy of the pre-scrubbed map with the location of all those military bases, and where is that intelligence now headed for? Story coming on out of Israel-Palestine news, a little bit of good news. This year's annual Gallup poll has revealed a major shift in sentiment among Americans regarding Israel and the Palestinians, with the majority of Democrats for the first time responding that the U.S. should be putting more pressure on the Israeli government than the Palestinian leadership. So they want this matter resolved. They understand it's Israel that's getting in the way of this. A reconnaissance aircraft operated by the United States Air Force made the closest ever flight on China's coast on Monday, coming within 25.33 nautical miles, according to South China Sea Strategic Situation Probing Initiative, a think tank based in Beijing. And China said the Boeing RC-135 reconnaissance aircraft flew closer to China's coast than ever before. The spy plane's usual distance from China is around 50 to 70 nautical miles. The 25.33 nautical miles were unexpected by China. However, technically, it's still in international airspace. Okay. China, meanwhile, has issued a report urging the United States to drop the double standard on human rights, basically saying that the United States needs to clean up its own human rights abuses before they start pointing fingers at anybody else. Getting into weapon systems now, DARPA is now working on artificial intelligence pilots for existing warplanes, in this case F-16s, and they're going through these virtual dogfights to see how well they're going to work. But that's only the beginning, because somewhere down the road, not too far, they're going to actually put these AI computers in the real jets, let them take off for a live fly dogfight, and see how well they do against their human targets. Sounds like the beginning of the movie Green Lantern, doesn't it? Okay. The U.S. military is the world's single largest consumer and burner of oil, and as a result, one of the world's top greenhouse gas emitters. And this is kind of weird because the Defense Department is worried about climate change. They think it's a real problem, but they're one of the worst offenders out there. I love this next story. A Marine Corps F-35B fighter jet accidentally shot itself with its own gun pod. Now, the reason it's got a gun pod, there is a design defect with the F-35. The internal cannon is so powerful that when fired, it can actually bend the airframe. So they solved that problem by adding an external gun pod. More weight, less maneuverability, all the usual things that go along with a slapdash solution like that. But in this particular case, the 25 millimeter shells in the gun are explosive, and one of them apparently detonated just out of the barrel of the cannon, damaging the aircraft. Now, the aircraft was still flyable, and the pilot got it back safely to base, but you know, there's efficiency, you know, a warplane that shoots itself down. Getting on to the economic news, over in Japan, they've had a fire at a semiconductor factory, and it's got the entire industry jumpy. I mean, there's already a problem with shortages of semiconductors hitting the automotive industry all over the world. So this fire at this factory, Renesas, which is a major provider of auto chips, it took place in the clean room, which is a very, very large room where all the chip-making machines are kept. But the CEO, Hidetoshi Shibata, said this is going to have a major impact on the car industry. So maybe we should go back to non-computerized cars. Simple things we can fix ourselves. Here's an interesting little story. One of the world's biggest container ships caused a massive traffic jam on the Suez Canal after it ran aground and blocked the key waterway. And it was blocking all traffic in both directions. The Panama-flagged cargo ship Ever Given just basically ran aground. It's a huge, huge ship. The good news is, just before airtime, they reported it had been partially refloated and pulled off to one side to allow the traffic on the Suez to resume. Lumber prices are up almost 200%. They're asking, when will the wood shortage end? And they're pointing the finger of blame at COVID-19 because people who are out there in the woods harvesting the trees or processing them in the factories have been staying home under lockdown, or they're sick. And so there's been a disruption in the supply chain of lumber, and that, of course, law of supply and demand, the price has definitely gone up. Biden is threatening to continue the Trump sanctions on Germany for the Nord Stream 2 pipeline. Now, Nord Stream 2 is designed to bring oil, actually natural gas, from Russia to Europe, bypassing Ukraine. And this has political ramifications. And those pipelines are strategic assets, and where they go and who they go to can lead to war, as it did in Afghanistan. So the Biden White House appears content to continue Trump's unbending policy stance on the Russia to Germany Nord Stream 2 pipeline. And it was the Trump administration that unleashed a series of punitive measures targeting any Western company that attempts to complete work on the project, which did serve to stall its completion, which is said to be at least 90% constructed. So they're getting it close to being done there. I can imagine that both Germany and Russia are kind of tired of the U.S. throwing its weight around like that. Founders of Silicon Valley feces testing startup Ubiome are indicted on federal charges for defrauding investors and insurance providers out of more than $95 million. So this startup company tested fecal matter, and they're facing federal charges that they defrauded investors and health insurance providers of all that money. Over at the United States Postal Service, Postmaster General Louis DeJoy is saying there's a new 10-year plan that's going to cut post office hours and slow down deliveries. He's saying priority mail could take up to 5 days to arrive. And they're doing this because they're struggling economically. More and more communication is handled by email, and more packages are being sent by UPS and FedEx and the various other companies that specialize on that. Getting on into the border and immigration, the family unit holding cells in those little containment areas, they smell like urine and vomit. Fights break out in the unaccompanied minor cells. Scabies, lice, the flu, and COVID-19 are running rampant. Up to 80 individuals are squeezed into each 24 by 30-foot cell, and there aren't enough mattresses for everybody. Sheets of plastic divide the room. I mean, it's an ugly, ugly situation, and thank goodness that Project Veritas got those videos out there. Can you imagine what the corporate media would have done to Donald Trump if those migrant facility photos had emerged during his term in office? They would have gone right after him. But Biden gets a free pass from NBC, CBS, PBS, ABC, and the rest of them. Project Veritas, meanwhile, in an interview with Russia Today, said that Biden must be held accountable for the nightmare conditions at migrant facilities. And there was a poll recently done saying that the majority of American people are saying this has to be dealt with now. This can't be allowed to just sit and fester. Now, we talked the other day about how migrant youths were being temporarily housed at an oil workers' camp. This is apparently a $33 million facility that's designed to provide comfortable accommodations for oil workers. And actually, it doesn't cost $33 million. That's what the Biden administration is paying to rent the man cap built for the oil workers and engineers. And the nearby residents are very unhappy at the detention facility in their backyard, screaming, you know, they have doctors and chefs there living better than we are, which seems to be true for a lot of these illegal immigrants. They're getting better treatment from the government than the American citizens are. Okay, we're going to take another break for commercials, and we'll be back with more news. We're still talking about the immigration situation, and there's a story here from Blabber Buzz about how much stimulus cash is going to illegal immigrants. And it's going to total somewhere around $4.25 billion going to illegal aliens. Now, it's bad enough that the U.S. approved this very careless spending bill, but also for people who they're not even citizens. They're not even supposed to be here, and they're going to get free money. No wonder they're pouring over that border. Okay. Now, I want to back up a little bit to the corporate media handling of this tragedy in Boulder, Colorado. We just posted an article at whatreallyhappened.com from shtfplan.com talking about how corporate media is coordinating identical mass shooting narratives for different states across the country. I mentioned this before. Google mass shooting events and it comes up mass shooting in this state. So other people have noticed that as well. Okay, the FDA, getting into science and health here, the FDA is warning people not to drink the alkaline water brand Real Water because something in there is toxic. A man suffered liver failure, had to undergo a transplant apparently from drinking this product, and the lawsuits are definitely piling up. Sounds good that they're issuing the warning, but my question would be, why didn't the FDA catch on to this before it got out into the public? Do they just sit there and wait for people to, have their livers fall out on the floor before they say, oh, we got to look at this product? It's not proactive, it's reactive, and that's not good for a government here. Okay, story that's coming on out of Investment Watch blog talking about the ammunition shortage, which we have all been dealing with, and they've got 7 reasons why you can't buy ammo. Everyone was caught off guard by the sudden surge in demand. COVID boosted demand and cut the workforce. A lot of it has to do with supply chain. If you want the wrong cartridges at the wrong time. There are what are called the loading dock deals, where when gun store owners get a shipment of ammunition, they'll call their favored customers and they'll basically sell them the ammunition out the back door. And that leaves the ordinary people kind of out of luck here. And even when there is ammunition in stock at the shop, rationing is taking place. Local gun shops are low priority for the ammunition manufacturers, and the price of ammunition has gone right through the roof. I remember when I was a kid, ammunition was very, very inexpensive, but now it's running roughly $1 per trigger pull. This is double the price before the pandemic. So it's being a shooter is now getting to be very expensive, and to me, that's an infringement of our right to keep and bear arms. Okay, we're going to take a break, and welcome back to our show here, hour number 2. The phone lines are open, area code 512-248-8252. The calls are just pouring in right now, and we're going to start with Peter in Los Angeles. Hello, Peter. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Mike. I want to refer to I'm getting a repeat here. I'm sorry, Mike, on my radio. But what I want to talk about. Are you still there?
Yeah, I'm still here, and you're on the air.
Okay. Is immigration, and I want to harken back a little bit to under Trump, when and prior to Trump. When Biden and Obama were in office, by the way, which is when in 2015, when the shooter from Boulder came into the country.
Yes.
And then, of course, as a Syrian, and then remember, one of the first things that Trump did, Mike, was say, I want a ban on new immigration from these countries. You remember?
I remember that.
And they were mostly Muslim, and the font of most of or some of the terrorism. And he was.
Well, it looks like they're coming to get you there, Peter. They caught you calling into the show.
Yeah, yeah. He was roundly criticized, Mike.
Yes. As
being a racist for doing that. And then when further when he got in office, remember all the nonstop media coverage about the inhuman facilities for the kids, especially the kids.
Yes.
And how the kids were being separated and blah blah. Well, they were separated, but Trump got them back together, and he then deported them with their parents. But the reason why I'm saying this, and how the media was all over that, is that now you are not allowed, the media is not allowed to get anywhere close to any of these facilities, which they're expanding because of the unbelievable demand. And now, by the way, they seem to be openly calling for and encouraging children on their own to come to the United States. Have you been catching that as well?
Yeah, I've been catching that as well. And, it puts these kids in a tremendous danger, from not just the danger of coming across the border by themselves, but there's predators out there, there's criminals out there. I mean, it really is placing them in a tremendous amount of danger.
Well, that's my primary point about this, Mike, is that's exactly where I was going with this. You'll remember, of course, for years and years, the FBI is using sexual blackmail on people. We know that J. Edgar Hoover was doing that with John Kennedy, and I'm sure well before that. And then we have the Franklin scandal when they were pedophilia with Boys Town.
Yes.
And then we have the NXIVM scandal and the Epstein candle. And all this pedophilia that's going on, and these kids, and there are thousands of them, are going to be wards of the state. And this seems to be a state where the leadership is heavily, and by the way, Biden also canceled Trump's concentration on prosecuting pedophilia. You remember?
No, I had forgotten about that part of it.
Yeah, he had a big push for law enforcement to go after pedophiles, and there were quite a few prosecutions. And Trump, Biden discontinued that. So the question I want to ask...
Well, given Biden's history of sniffing little girls' hair and everything like that, I'm not really surprised.
Nor am I. And his sons, by the way.
Oh, yeah, Hunter. Yeah.
But you got to wonder, these kids growing up to be without any sort of loving parental, oversight as wards of the state, if this isn't just a pedophilic farm,
yeah,
for the elite, it has to be at least considered. And since Epstein and the Mossad and the CIA were involved with that, why wouldn't they use that as a kid farm for that? Just saying.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a pretty ugly idea. And, it's another one of the parallels between our country and Rome just before it fell apart.
Well, it's pretty sad, but it seems to be, Mike, if they can't, the getting ahead and getting promoted or appointed to a powerful post, even in the court, we've witnessed some pretty good about turns in the court.
Yeah,
seems to be connection with sexual blackmail and you know what, the old fashioned, just going after the neighbor's wife or it doesn't seem to work anymore. They have to be able to get you on something worse, and there's not much worse than kitty porn.
No, there isn't. That's about as low as it gets.
That's as low as it gets, but that's it. Seems to be, and there are industries built up around it. Like Epstein had one. The Nexium guys had
yes.
blackmail. By the way, with the Bronfmans, the daughter of the World Jewish Council president, Epstein, affiliated with MAGA. I mean, there's a lot of bad stuff going on, Mike.
Yes, there is,
and a lot of intelligence agencies on this, and some of them are foreign, and they're all targeting our politicians, our military, and our top level executives. This smacks to me of a real.
Hello?
Without being invited in.
Okay, you dropped out there for a second.
I'm sorry, I'm in my car, Mike. But
okay.
This sounds to me like this is a real. This could be a real threat for something like that, a continuation of that. So.
Okay,
anyway,
well,
that was my comment, Mike.
All right, well, thank you for the phone call, and we're going to switch over to Joe in Nome. Hello, Joe. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind today?
Well, yeah, they're not couching that King Super shooter as a hate crime, are they?
Well, they haven't yet, no.
Yeah, well, if that's a hate crime, well, hey, I'm a hate criminal too because I indulge in hate speech quite a bit.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not very popular for that either. I got banned from Must Read Alaska just the other day. I was previously banned from Anchorage Daily Snooze.
Yes.
Basically for pointing out that Anchorage is a military town.
Yes.
We got Fort Rich and we got Elmendorf, and when the Chinese were here the other day, they were launching a bunch of planes right next door at Elmendorf, apparently they were wanting to give them a good view of that from the top of the Captain Cook hotel.
Okay.
But anyway, I just want to comment on not only do I indulge in hate speech, what do you think rap is all about? Isn't that all about hate?
I have not really spent a lot of time listening to rap music. I'm not a big fan of it, no more than I'm a fan of heavy metal. But I understand that some of those lyrics in the rap songs are definitely hateful, anti-woman, and there's some nasty stuff out there. But it's making money, and so they leave it alone.
Oh, all the kids around here are all blaring. These are all native kids around here. They're blaring that stuff out of their boom boxes. Boy, they got all the toys.
Yep.
But anyway, so yeah, there was something else I was going to say there. Oh yeah, on the pedophilia business. I've been up in their face about that out here in Nome. Yeah, like you were saying. It's like the days of Rome.
Yes.
No, it's like the days of Nome before it fell apart.
Okay.
Anyway, this started with Baden-Powell, the guy that founded the Boy Scouts, for Christ's sake. And war is gay. That's all there is to it. They call Afghanistan the graveyard empires chiefly because that's where Alexander the Great pedophile met his Waterloo.
No, that's not where Alexander the Great met his Waterloo. In fact, Alexander the Great was the last military commander to conquer and hold on to the place, and he only kept it for 3 years. Alexander the Great died, after basically conquering Egypt. Some historians think he was poisoned. Others simply think he drank himself to death.
No, look, he got a poison arrow in him when he was in Afghanistan, okay?
Okay.
And he wanted to go further east, but that was what stopped him. Anyway, that's my take on it.
Okay.
But yeah, this pedophilia business started with the Boy Scouts.
I think it started a lot before that. I mean, pedophilia was actually accepted behavior in ancient civilizations.
No. I mean, in this country.
Yeah, in this country, but I don't think it started with the Boy Scouts either. I'm sure it probably goes back to the, the early founding of the nation itself. Because don't forget, Great Britain was emptying its prisons and putting them on the ships for the New World. And so there was some questionable individuals who came ashore. And then following the American Revolution, Britain started doing the same thing to Australia.
Well, Baden-Powell was a Brit. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. I'll let you get on to more callers. Talk to you later.
All right.
Bye.
Thanks a lot. We're going to switch over to Mike in Kentucky. Hello, Mike. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Yeah, there's nothing new under the sun. I don't think you can, consider every civilization probably has, out of every 10,000 humans, or so many that are pedophiles. So you go back 100 years and dig up the law dictionary. Under the old common law, the age of consent to marry was 12 for girls, 14 for boys. And it wasn't until the 90s, I think, that Georgia raised the age of consent for girls from 14 to 16. So, California's trying to make it a 10-year age gap, I think, but that's not what I called about. I looked all over what really happened at COM. You had read something that said that the masks were going to be at least till 2025.
Yeah, we had a story. We had a story about that today. We had another story about that yesterday. And I feel like it's a trial balloon. They're trying to see if people will go along with it, and I think it's going to be a resounding no.
All right, on the Centers for Disease Control, which is what I told the screener or the producer there, you had talked about the mea culpa, I think is what I've seen, the one story that Republic Broadcasting has up on the World Health Organization admitting to the PCR test being junk.
Yes.
Back in July, by accident, I ran across a preprint paper that was, I think, in the Centers for Disease Control, like virology section. So I wrote up a thing on it, and it was published in September. It was preprint way back in July to be published in September. I can't tell that they changed anything on it. They just published it just like it had been in July, and it was basically saying it's about the long-windiest way with a bunch of words and technical jargon.
Yeah.
Say that these tests are junk,
They
and
are
that
junk.
you need to go to a BS level 2. That's the joke I made, that it's time for turning the level 2.
Yes.
Because they need the PRE and confirm the IgG Elysia test, and
Yes.
that's what this guy was calling for. He said, despite their speed and ease of use and all that, the rapid tests have questionable accuracy. It's no doubt about it. He just says everybody knows this, and so positive tests or to track the pandemic accurately or scientifically. And I remember back in, I don't know, June or whatever, a lot of the alternative media was being trashed.
Yes.
Because they said that they were quoting this and said that the PCR tests were scientifically useless. Well, that's what this guy says, and it's published by the Centers for Disease Control. I published my note about it on July 31st. So,
well,
I mean,
the PCR test was never intended to be used as a diagnostic tool, and the fact is that if you run it past 30 cycles, you're going to get so much noise in there that you can read it as anything at all. I mean, you could, find the Midas gene in there.
Rigging it. They're rigging it.
Yeah.
And just because you have a positive test does not mean you have a case of COVID-19 unless the symptoms develop. That's why they're trying to emphasize, I think, the idea that you can be an asymptomatic spreader. Now, Fornicating Ferguson, as I call him, I think in late March, had to go back to the Parliament and say, guys, this thing is replicating about twice what we thought, so the lockdown was useless because half of England was already exposed before we had our first positive confirmed test in late January.
Mm-hmm.
So half the population by middle of January was already exposed, and so that means that there's a lot more people that probably just don't even shed the virus. If they get exposed to it, they build their own little immunity and handle it.
Okay.
And so it just doesn't make, a whole lot of this doesn't make sense. And there's a frequent caller to RBN that has offered an explanation which seems like it needs to be looked at.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's another vector for this besides spreading through contact with human-to-human contact. Like maybe somehow it's coming through, food stuff, since so much junk has come from China now.
Could be.
I know that there was 1 million pounds of pork in spring of 2019 that was destroyed, being imported into, and you were just talking about the Panama Canal thing, or the Suez Canal thing. 1 million pounds of pork was destroyed for testing positive for that African swine flu,
mm-hmm.
being imported into New Jersey. And what they're just trying to shuffle the books. It sounds like we're exporting all this pork to China. At the same time, we're importing pork from China and risking these pathogens, and risking this stuff with globalization,
mm-hmm.
the zebra mussels, the Chinese carp, the Asian tick scare, if you've heard about that.
Yeah, I've heard about that.
Murder hornets may be a bunch of hooey, but,
remember the killer bees?
Yeah. They burned out. I think probably a lot of this stuff just if it's outside of its normal environment, it can eventually, the killer bees were bred to be less killer, I guess. But
yeah, they started
up,
having sex with those American bees, and they got really mellow really quick.
Oh yeah, got on food stamps, and then they're just sitting around watching TV. But anyway, got on the pop train. Anyway. You know about the pop train. Anyway, so yeah, there's just so much of this that goes beyond they're losing credibility for anybody that's paying attention, I think. But there's so many people
I
that
agree.
are.
I mean, numbers have been all over the place. Fauci, I think he writes his press announcements with a dartboard because he flip-flops back and forth so much. It's like, what is this guy saying this week?
Well, Zach Bush, a triple board certified guy from Hawaii. I don't know if you ever knew of him. It'd be a great guest if you could get him. He's like elder care specialist and all this stuff. He's like a Doogie
I certainly need that.
Well, he said basically, Del Bigtree interviewed him, and he was saying that a lot of years they put in the flu shots coronaviruses. Whatever the basic.
Well, that's an interesting theory. Anyway, listen, Joe, I got to let you go. We have other callers waiting on the line, and we need to take a commercial break, and we will be right back. And first of all, an apology. That last caller was not Joe. It was Mike in Kentucky, and I got the names confused because I'm going up and down the little list here. A friendly reminder and a nudge that Republic Broadcasting Network needs you. They need your continuing support so that we can go on out informing the American people so that they can make good choices, especially during this tumultuous time. So once again, the postal address where you can send a check, money order, or if you prefer anonymity cash, is Republic Broadcasting Network, 2251 Double Creek Drive, number 302, Round Rock, Texas, 78664. The phone number where you can make a credit or debit card donation is 800-724-2719, extension 3. And if you send in a donation for $100 or more, include your return address and your t-shirt size, and you'll get one of these spiffy official RBN t-shirts to wear around and brag about how you support the only free media left in this country. And don't forget, the Frontside Firearms deal is still going on. Okay. Let's see. They have mugs now, coffee cups. So say whether you want. Well, I want one of those coffee cups. My goodness. I go through a lot of coffee on this show. In fact, that's what I do is I turn coffee into radio entertainment here. Okay, so let's go back to the phones here. Tom in Florida. Tom, welcome to the show. I may have to take you through the commercial break. What's on your mind?
Yeah, Mike, I wish I could get a coffee cup, but I take a little shot. I eat a little shot cup for my coffee.
I see.
Yeah, Mike.
Yep.
But here's what the real deal is, Mike. Seriously, I was in the hospital for over day and night here, and when I go, I have a little eye problem. I have to straighten out, and so I spent a night in the hospital, and I'm home now. But I just got to say this, till I get to the real meat of the potatoes here. Yeah, it was a little rough in there, especially that 90% of the people in these hospitals here in South Florida speak Spanish instead of English. It's like, I don't know what's going on. They would never allow 150 million Germans to speak German in hospitals, all the hospitals and where all the German Americans live. That would never be tolerated, but the Spanish is tolerated in all these southern states.
Well,
but the Germans are not tolerated.
There's a lot of Germans, German ancestry people living here in Indiana, but they all speak excellent English.
That's correct, and they're not allowed to speak German on the side, okay? Let's get that straight. But here's what I want to talk about, Mike. I don't know if you've heard about the case here in South Florida. And, yeah, the people in these hospitals have no respect for English, okay? So I just want you to know that. This is what this whole plot is. And Joe Biden, bumbling Biden's the one that said, get a shotgun and saw it off 12 inches and you have a riot gun.
I remember that
he's trying to ban all guns. Bumbling Biden, that imbecile, he should be thrown in jail for allowing the invasion at our border. But here, Mike, before I go there, I'm sure, have you heard about the case of the young white woman raped here in Miami on South Beach?
Yes.
Mike? Okay, well, it's been all over. Now they're finally reporting it, Mike. This is how it is. Fox News reported a little bit yesterday in Breitbart. But now the local channels here, when I was in the hospital, were talking about this white woman raped by two men. Now, her name was Christine Engelhardt.
Yes.
That was the young woman from Philadelphia. Came down here spring break. I don't know if she was even in college. She came down here. They have tape of these two guys marching her in a motel room, and they brutally raped her, and they drugged her out, and now I don't know what's going to happen with the situation. But I'm looking at all the statistics. And Matt Sludge, the Sludge report, I happened to go just hit the Sludge report when I was in the hospital last night. And I'm looking at Sludge report, and he's reporting, I guess the Herald or somebody in one of these local papers here saying that on South Beach, Mike, 74% of the crime on South Beach committed by Afro-Americans, right?
Yep.
Now, listen to this. 60%, Matt Drudge said 13% of the population that commit 60% of the crime. That's what according to Matt Drudge report.
Yes.
Mike, and that is not now. They had a local station here, and I listened this morning, and the guy said this, Mike. It would have been 2 white men raping a black woman. You'd probably have half of the United States on fire right now.
Yes.
You agree with that, Mike?
I agree with that.
You agree with that?
Yes.
So if you 2 white young guys, 20 years old, whatever. These guys are about 20 and 21, I think it was. Young guys. If it would have been 2 white guys raping a black girl, it would be. I think we'd have our cities in flames. You agree with that, right, Mike?
Do you remember the Tawani Brawley rape hoax, where she claimed that she was assaulted by white kids and raped and then thrown in a trash can, and the whole nation went totally ballistic until it came out she'd made the whole thing up?
Yes, and the same with the Duke players. But that was Al Sharpton, the poverty pimp, race hater. That was Al Sharpton. I remember all that really well. The reason I bring this up, Mike, because even the Herald, as liberal as they are in here, all these papers are liberal. Even the Miami Herald is like insinuated that. I mean, I'm not insinuated. They're enraged, I guess is the word I'm looking for, that this happened.
Yes.
Now, here's another thing the Herald did report on, Mike. They've confiscated, since spring break started, over 120 guns. That was reported in the Miami Herald.
Wow.
120 guns on South Beach. Now, South Beach, like Fort Lauderdale, used to be the mecca for spring breakers. Now it's South Beach.
Yes.
I don't even want to go into the statistics. You can figure it out for yourself or have Mike do it. You can look at the statistics that's going on here in South Florida with these spring breakers now. Now, this young woman was literally drugged out.
Tom, I got to put you on hold. Don't hang up. We got to take a break for commercials, and we'll be right back. To our show here, and we are talking with Tom in Florida, and it's really no secret that the corporate media likes to downplay stories where it's black on white crime, but if it's white on black crime, it gets the headline treatment. I mean, we've seen that for years now.
Yeah, Mike. Do you remember the case last year with the girl from Alabama?
Yes.
She was at a bar. 2 guys approached her when they wanted to get her stoned. So she goes out in the car, and they end up taking her to the row house wherever they lived, and they brutally raped her. They found her body in the backyard, burnt to a cinder. Her body was burnt to a cinder. Now, if that would have been reversed, and it would have been the other way around, Mike, we'd have had rioting all over the country a year ago.
Yes.
And we're not talking about Antifa and Black Lives Matter. Now, Mike, this case here is shocking to the sense that what's going on here is that the media is basically keeping it shut up, but so many people now are outraged. And the girl was from Philadelphia, so I don't know how the story's playing up there. But here in South Florida now, it's starting to hit home, because even the Hispanic TV down here, my wife turns that on once in a while, and I noticed the Cuban networks are much more blunt than the American networks. They'll show actual footage and everything, where American white media will not do that. The Jewish-controlled Zog media will not do that, Mike.
Yes. Because,
look, Mike, I'm gonna tell you right now, Mike, there is a white genocide going on. They want to kill all white men. And I don't care what anybody says. I don't care if you get emails. I wonder if you got emails last week, Mike, when you brought up the word Operation Wetback. Did you get any emails for that, Mike?
Actually, no, I didn't. I thought I was going to, but apparently we don't have any liberals listening to this show.
Yeah, exactly. Well,
imagine my shock. I mean, I'm shocked. I'm heartbroken.
Yeah, right. And here's the deal, Mike. I believe if you were to say white, world, and proud, you'd be called a racist.
Yes.
If you were to have that like a white, I'm white. Well, it's a white world, and I'm proud, or WWW, white world, wonderful white world, or something like that. You can't even
White Lives Matter
like that. Yeah, there you go. Yeah, I mean, there you go, Mike. And we are the majority still, Mike, but we're allowing the Zog minus the minus what are they, 2% of our population to run our dictate.
Yes.
We can just definitely not tolerate this no more. This has got to come to a head. It's going to have to come to a head one way or another. We cannot allow Zog media to build up with these leftist kooks, the white kooks who want to take down the white. Mike, look, I'll get right to the point. Who fought all these wars? Who is the majority of the men who fought in these wars, Mike? All our wars.
You've
Who's the majority? Tell me the truth.
Tom, you've mentioned this point before, and we do have other.
I hope it hits home. I hope it hits home, Mike, because I have family that fought in all these wars.
Yes.
Okay. And
so do I.
Home because I'm not very. I know you did, Mike, and I'm very bitter about this because I'm sick of looking at these leftist communist media. Mike, let's call it what it really is. Like you've been saying, it's Marxism.
Yes.
Marxism is running rampant in the United States right now. There's no question about it. But when you have a media shutting up the fact that all these white women are being raped and murdered. But if it was in reverse, they would literally try to start. They're doing it right now. They're trying to start all race war, Mike.
Yes.
They're literally trying that. You agree with that, Mike?
I agree with that.
Okay. Well, that's okay. Thank you. You know, Mike, one more thing. I'll let you go. I know you got our callers.
Yes, I do.
I'm not going to go on immigration too hard. But Bumble and Biden is literally trying to turn even red states blue by bringing these people into Idaho, Wyoming, and all that. That's what's going to happen in this dictate with this bumbling buffoon. He's going to take all those people out of Texas, Arizona, and California, going to ship them north where the red states are because they're not that big of populations. And if white people that say enough is enough, you bumbling freak, you're done, Biden. Biden is a dirty rat. Okay, the guy's telling everybody 4 or 5 years ago, get a shotgun and saw it off, and you'll have your riot gun. You don't have to worry about buying AR-15s or AK-47s. So you got this buffoon telling everybody go buy a double-barrel shotgun. It's on tape, Mike. You can bring it up.
Yeah.
And go get double-aught buck. Put double-aught buck in your shotgun, and you won't have to worry about it getting an AR or AK. But this freak is a president of the United States. You can't even talk normally, Mike. He's falling down on airplanes. Mm-hmm. This guy's the commander-in-chief of this country. Our founding fathers are rolling in their graves looking at this buffoonery. This is insanity. And, you know, Mike, I got to say this. I'll let you go. I really the election was stolen. But still, yes. Mike, let's not lie ourselves. You got these white women in these blue states, and white men in these states will always be liberal, licky, kissy, touchy-feelies because they have no clue what's happening to their country.
Again, we can't make that assumption. We can't make that assumption because the election numbers from November are not accurate. Anyway, Tom, got to let you go.
I agree with that, Mike. I agree with that. But, Mike, I'll tell you, all you got to do is go to a hospital where they don't speak English, and you'll see how upset you'll get. Your blood pressure will go up. So
well, my blood pressure's already elevated here. Tom, we got to let you go. We're going to switch to...
You too. God bless, Mike.
All right. Got to switch to Mark in North Carolina. Mark, thank you for waiting so patiently, and what's on your mind?
Hey, Mike. I was thinking about what happened in Boulder, Colorado.
Yes.
And, everything is coming to fruition now, what I kind of suspected already. I told you yesterday. Now it turns out this clown was the FBI knew about it. Okay?
Yes.
Now it comes out his father, obviously not in this country that long, but obviously doing very well for themselves with a $800,000 house.
Yes.
Okay. I mean, it's pretty rich, if you ask me. And even it's bragged about it on Twitter.
Yes.
Comes from a wealthy household. All right. How do you get that money? So I put it together. I'm putting every piece together again. And also, his father supposedly hates Shiites. Right?
Okay, gotcha.
Of ISIS and Al Qaeda, that this country, the CIA and Israel, the Mossad and British MI6 were supporting. All right, to try to overthrow Assad. So there it is. They brought these people here. They probably rewarded this guy. I don't know what. I haven't been able to find out yet what kind of a job his father held, but or whether he was just bribed or what. How they got all this kind of money. Do you know what kind of job he held?
No, I don't. I don't have that information. I haven't looked into it. I'm still focused on this Syrian individual, and I really do think he was used as a patsy, and this whole thing is a setup.
Exactly. So the FBI, they have their people who they use when they want to, and this guy was very convenient, especially after that. Evidently they had a so-called assault weapons ban in Boulder that was just relinquished this week.
Yes.
A week earlier.
Yep.
All right. So very convenient. And I want to remind you of the First World Trade Center when they had this Egyptian patriot now.
Yes.
Okay? He was not somebody recruited because he was a member of a criminal gang. He was a real patriot. He had been a colonel in Egypt, and he wanted to help out. He knew there were people that were planning, that wanted to commit terrorism in this country, and he volunteered to infiltrate. So the FBI, he was supposed to have a dummy explosive.
A dummy bomb, yeah. And the FBI said no, just let the real bomb go off.
Exactly. I think his name was Salim.
Yes.
Anyway, but fortunately, thank God, this guy he was not one of these all-trusting types, and he had the gumption to actually
record
the FBI. record the FBI, what they were doing. I don't think at that time they might have cell phones, but but somehow he recorded what they were doing.
Well,
okay?
even the New York Times had to report the story. The evidence was so solid.
So the only reason he didn't go to prison for the rest of his life, or killed in jail or whatever else, because they knew they couldn't do that to him. Okay, they knew that this guy was actually a hero, trying to be a hero, and the FBI would see him. Now, what is the matter with me? I'm thinking to myself, if I was a sheriff there in a place like Boulder, Colorado, okay, the first thing I would do is I would tell the FBI to back out, butt out. You're not going to be investigating this at all. This is my jurisdiction. I'm the county sheriff. I'm elected by the people, and you, FBI, are suspects in this whole thing. So I'm treating you as suspects. And that's what should happen in these shootings. Treat this criminal organization as suspects. Not as that they're helping solve they're not helping solve anything. But that's what you really need. You need a good county sheriff who has it together, understands the Constitution, why he's the sheriff, is loyal to the people, and understands exactly how evil much of this federal government is, especially agencies like the FBI and the CIA. It's the same thing, by the way, when you had the shooting in that school there in Broward County or Coward County, what they call it. The FBI knew who this guy was.
Yes, they did.
And I don't believe.
Apparently, a good friend of the shooter had been the subject of an FBI investigation, and that's what they're saying. That's how they know this guy. But I think they probably tried to co-opt him, and they made him a patsy. I mean, if you look at his psychological profile, he's exactly the kind of people that the FBI likes to recruit for these kind of operations.
Absolutely, 100%. But nobody wants to really investigate these things because you don't have a real press anymore. All right?
Mm-hmm.
You have basically, it's no better than Pravda during when Pravda was with the Soviet Union. They just don't want to investigate. They don't want to look into things. There's so much evidence. I mean, you don't have to be the world's greatest investigator to put these things together. I had some investigative experience with various jobs I've had, but routine, pretty basic.
Okay.
I'm able to put it together. Okay. So you think people who are, either professional investigative reporters or or even, present actual investigators who are working for some kind of law enforcement agencies or something like that, you think these people, they could find the right people to put this thing together and find it, because you wouldn't have to dig very hard to find out
no, you wouldn't.
The FBI compromised and they're basically a bunch of dirtbags. It wouldn't take that much, and a good county sheriff would be a good start. Tell them to back off. This is our investigation, and you are suspects. And that's it. That's pretty much it for me. Like I was serious, and you have other callers.
All right.
Okay?
Thanks an awful lot here. And we do have several phone lines open, 512-248-8252. And we're going to go to Henry in Connecticut. Hello, Henry. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Yeah, hello. Hi. Hi. Hey, Tom. He's out there in Florida. Hello. And Blue Moon, if you're out there. Hello. Yeah, this thing with the immigration you mentioned, Tom did make a good point there, though. He's right about that to a point, because even though I'm still a young guy, I could go back to, I say in the 1990s.
Mm-hmm.
That guy Sharpton, he became a millionaire from all that race hustling.
Oh, yes, he did. He made a lot of money off of that.
Race hustler. Oh no, he's a multi-millionaire.
Yes.
That's good business. That's good money.
Yes.
Liz, that's a business. And I remember Bob Grant, he was on the radio, not to agree with everything with Bob Grant, because he talked too much about the ones on welfare, but at the same time, like, we should just let these people come here. As long as they're just not getting welfare. That's kind of stupid. What about changing this country's culture and demographic? That's what they're concerned about in Hungary and Germany.
What about taking jobs away from legal American citizens?
Right, and downsizing wages, too. Because
Yes.
the guy told me that. He said when the Mexicans come in, I get $25 an hour, and when they come here, these Mexicans blank me up. I won't use the word, because I get $25 an hour when it's some construction thing or something, and they do it for... what it was back then. This was about 6 years ago.
Okay.
I don't know, maybe it was 8 or 10 or something like that. or $8, something like that. Anyway, anyway, let me move on quickly. So I know you got other callers, so I don't take long like the other callers you had. I listen to this network a lot. I do occasionally listen to John B. Wells. Now, John B. Wells last night on this, I won't mention the show, I'll find it. So, listen to this one mainly because it's got much more format. This network got much more shows, too.
Okay.
He had Mary Ann Mendoza on.
Okay.
I think there was controversy between Mary Ann Mendoza and not between Trump and Mary Ann Mendoza, but something with the Republican. She was going to be a minority speaker or something. Okay. She was on last night, not talking about the Republican stuff at all. She was talking about the illegal immigration because she lost her son who was a police officer.
Yes.
And the state where she's in. Okay, she was talking to me about the whole thing. Now, here's the thing. I'll make it quick. I don't know if you know this, and I found out from her, it was an eye-opener, because I was wondering why was there, sometimes when you hear of child rape, we're not talking about, rape was 20, 18, 16, or what, but child rape, like 10, 12, 11.
Even younger than that. It's disgusting.
Well, that blows me off. But anyway, this is the point. Cut to the chase. You would think it's always like American, a white guy, a white girl, or a black dude, and there's always a lot of third worlders and illegal, and I couldn't understand that. Okay, So when I heard her show, and this is something I've heard, doesn't happen all the time, but like here and there, off and on. Okay, so cut to the chase. When I heard John B. Wells' show, Covered in the Midnight last night with Mary Ann Mendoza, she said, I don't know if you know this, but the age of consent in Mexico is 12.
Okay.
Now, who would want 12, right? I could see 15, like most of Europe. I could see 16. That's always been there before World War II. Who would have 12? Well, it must have been before Vicente Fox. It must have been one of those ones tied in with the Luciferian Illuminati thing. They may have changed the laws in Mexico, but then they may have had it. Maybe it was 14, they made it 12, like that political party in the Netherlands, but they only get 1%. They don't get crap. So it all fits. Now, I'm thinking now, and so that's why I was hearing that crap in Framingville.
Okay.
I think it's Framingville, Nassau County in Long Island, that they were talking about somebody, illegal aliens soliciting their 13-year-olds for sex. They may have fucking hookers or not hookers, just in general. And I said, that's why, because we got people here coming here illegally that in their country, Mexico, is the legal age of 12. They don't know any different.
Yes.
They shouldn't. Well, I agree with you, but I'm saying, and we letting them in, and instead of letting in Central and Northern Europeans, if we, let's say, even let in mostly illegal people from Germany, Sweden, Norway, Netherlands, Luxembourg, Austria, France, even Belarus, you wouldn't have that problem.
Well, I disagree because we're not talking about people coming on in and dating these 12-year-olds. We're talking about rape, which it doesn't matter what the age involved is. It's still rape, whether it's a 12-year-old or a 30-year-old.
Well, that's true. But see, if you're taking in people illegally where their legal age of consent is pedophile age, not 15 or 16 or 17, like even this state is 16. New York is 17, no matter how old you are. This state is 16, no matter how old you are, unless you're a teacher. I mean, I don't have a 16-year-old girlfriend.
Okay, Henry?
I have police officers.
Okay, I got to put you on hold. Don't hang up. Okay. I'm going to come right back to you after this commercial break. Welcome back to our show. Last segment to today's program, and we're talking with Henry. And Henry, if you could just sort of pick up where you left off.
Yeah, but I'll make it quick because you got other calls. So what I'm saying is that when I heard that last night, right, it opened my eyes in a sense, and like what that guy Patrick Howley was saying. So that's why you've got people coming in, particularly from that country. So their age of consent is 12. They grew up in it, don't even know. I mean, don't know, differently. I'll put it that way. I'm not saying agree with it. So they come here and they go on a laundromat. They see somebody 14. Well, that's 2 years over legal. So that's like 20-year-olds to, let's say, some state that has 18. I mean, you get my drift.
Yes.
You see what I'm saying?
Yes.
Right. So that's what I'm saying. And if we had people, and they want to bring me people because they work and they work and they work for less. So this is what I remember, like for the baby boomer generation, older than me, like back in the early 2000, late 1990s. So and Clinton got out and left, and he had Bush. So if we brought in more people from the countries, and even some of the women we prefer to have here from those countries I mentioned in Europe. You wouldn't, you could have criminals here and there, but what I'm saying is that their legal age of consent isn't 12, even in the Netherlands is 16, okay?
Okay.
So you wouldn't have that problem. You wouldn't have a problem with people bringing people here illegally that come from a country where the age of consent is 12. And so then you have that. Then you have the Luciferian pedophile ring, but that deals with ritual, so that runs some parts of Washington.
Yes.
But it's not all of them in Congress. It's not all of them in the Senate, but the ones are there. Okay. So then they want that border open for child smuggling, and they get the cartels, and then, whatever they're going to use for sacrifices or and other stuff. And there's a reason why they're doing that to these entities. They are real entities because I know about the occult. I don't practice that kind of magic. There's what they do, even the Vatican, the high level of Vatican, the entity feeds on the energy of the thing. I'm going to get it. That's another show. That's something for George Norrie. But anyway, that's why. So that's why we got this mess. We got to do something. Anyway, cut to the chase. I'm going to go. Tom is right. The woman that talked about the music with Bach and Handel.
Yes.
She's right. We got to do something about this immigration. We have to. We're going to have to keep calling the switchboard. You're going to have to, because you're not just talking about downsizing jobs and making us a dump and like Rome, but you're letting in, which is, it's not funny. But I was kind of laughing, then I said, no, it's not funny. It's serious. We're letting in illegal pedophiles in here as well. That's crazy. I mean, don't we have our own? Do we really know?
We have way too many on our own. There's no question about that.
Yeah, right. I mean, we have some of our own. It's the Luciferian, though. Most of it is connected to these cults, so it is. Most of it.
All right. Well, listen, Henry.
You don't need theirs.
Henry, I got to let you go. I'm sorry, the show is over. Okay, thanks an awful lot. And please stay tuned for John Stadmiller. I'm sure he's got lots of interesting things to share with you. Please spread the word of Republic Broadcasting. Spread the word of whatreallyhappened.com. Please donate. Apparently, Roger Landry will be on Stadmiller's show. We'll see you tomorrow. Aloha, America.